My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 36 years old, and I didn't know that 8 years of marriage could end with 9 words, typed casually on a Tuesday morning, as if they were no more important than a grocery list. I was sitting in my home office when my phone buzzed, laptop open, coffee going cold beside me, sunlight stretching across the floor in that quiet, ordinary way mornings always do before they ruin your life. I'm done. My parents think I deserve better. No explanation, no warning, no punctuation that suggested regret. I stared at the screen longer than I want to admit. 8 years together. 6 married. Countless dinners, holidays, inside jokes, shared routines, shared stress. Reduced to a verdict issued by his parents. My first instinct was to call him, to ask what happened, to negotiate, to smooth things over the way I always had, by shrinking myself just enough to keep the peace. But there was another feeling beneath that instinct. Exhaustion. The kind that settles into your bones after years of being quietly evaluated. Judged. Found lacking by people who never tried to know you. I typed 2 words. Then go. I didn't add anything else. I didn't soften it. I didn't ask him to reconsider. And when I hit send, I felt something unfamiliar wash over me. Relief. We met in our late 20s. He was charming in that polished, effortless way. Confident without being loud. The kind of man parents adored immediately. We dated for 2 years before getting married. The wedding was tasteful, expensive. His parents spared no cost and reminded me of it constantly, as if generosity came with an invoice attached. From the beginning, I knew I didn't quite fit. I didn't come from money. I didn't have the right last name. I built my career slowly, deliberately, without shortcuts or connections. At our wedding reception, his father raised a glass and said, smiling too tightly, that he hoped his son would continue to aim higher in all aspects of life. People laughed. I did too. I told myself it was a joke. His mother perfected the art of passive concern. Are you sure this career is stable long-term? Don't you think he could have options? Marriage is about ambition, Eleanor. Every family dinner became a performance review. How much did I make now? What was my next move? When would I finally elevate myself? My husband never defended me. He'd squeeze my knee under the table afterward and whisper, "They just want the best for me." For us, he always corrected. But it never felt like us. About 2 years ago, something shifted. He grew distant, critical, restless. He compared us to other couples, friends who traveled more, spent more, lived louder lives, husbands who earned more, wives who came from families that matched his. I worked longer hours, contributed more, tried harder. And still, it was never enough. So when that text came, something inside me simply stopped fighting. He didn't reply for hours after my response. What he didn't know, what his parents definitely didn't know, was that I had already been preparing for this ending. Not because I wanted it, but because I felt it coming. 6 months earlier, I started noticing things that didn't add up. Money disappearing from our joint account. Charges I didn't recognize. Business trips that felt excessive. He came home late, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked, he snapped, accused me of being paranoid, said I was monitoring him. So I stopped asking, and I started documenting, quietly, methodically. Not out of control, but out of self-preservation. Because when someone starts rewriting reality, the only defense is the truth. And I had been collecting it patiently, piece by piece. When the silence stretched after that text, I didn't panic. I sat back in my chair, opened a folder on my desktop, and for the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. After I sent, "Then go," the house stayed quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the suspended kind, like the moment right before a storm finally breaks. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, staring at my screen, my reflection faintly visible in the dark glass of the monitor. I looked steady, calmer than I expected. That scared me a little. Because grief usually announces itself loudly. This didn't. Instead, I opened the folder on my desktop I'd labeled something bland enough to avoid attention. Work Files Archive. Inside were months of screenshots, statements, timestamps, scanned receipts, everything neatly organized by date. I hadn't started collecting evidence because I wanted revenge. I started because I needed to know if I was imagining things. It began with the joint account. We'd always been transparent with money. Both contributed. Both had access. We were saving for a house. Nothing extravagant, just something solid. A future that made sense. Then, small amounts started disappearing. A few hundred here, a charge there. Restaurants I didn't recognize. hotels and cities he claimed he'd never visited. When I asked, he brushed it off. Corporate card mix-up, client dinner, expense report mistake. He said it so easily, so confidently, that I almost believed him. Almost. Then came the schedule changes. Late nights, last-minute trips, phone calls he took in the hallway, lowering his voice when I walked by. Once, I caught the scent of perfume on his jacket. Not subtle, not lingering from a crowded space. Something floral, sharp. I didn't own anything like it. When I mentioned it, his reaction was instant and explosive. What, now you're sniffing my clothes? You don't trust me at all, do you? God, Eleanor, you're turning into someone I don't even recognize. That was the moment I stopped confronting him, because every question ended the same way, with me apologizing. So instead I started watching. I downloaded bank statements, cross-referenced dates, noted patterns. Charges always appeared when he was traveling. Hotels booked under his name, weekend stays disguised as conferences, dinners that cost more than our monthly grocery bill. Still, I told myself there had to be an explanation, until I found the receipt in his coat pocket. Crumpled, forgotten. A boutique hotel. 2 nights, 1 room, 2 guests. I didn't confront him. I opened a spreadsheet. That's when I decided to hire someone. I hated myself for it at first. The idea felt invasive, desperate, but I needed to know whether I was losing my mind or finally seeing clearly. The investigator followed him for 2 weeks in March. What came back shattered whatever hope I had left. Photos of him entering hotels with her. His boss, a woman I'd met once at a company event. She shook my hand, smiled politely, asked what I did for a living like she was mentally filing me away under irrelevant. She was married. She had no ring in the photos. They didn't try to hide. Hands on his back, laughter, comfort. Like they'd been doing this for a long time. The investigator's report was clinical, neutral, but the truth inside it was brutal. The affair had been going on for nearly a year, almost exactly as long as his resentment toward me had started. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I sat on the floor of my office and felt something inside me go very, very still. Then I kept digging. Cloud backups he didn't know I had access to. Text message timestamps. Deleted threads recovered. Photos exchanged. Messages where they talked about leaving their spouses, planning a future, laughing about how naive I was. One message burned itself into my memory. She actually believes I'm at a training seminar. God, she's so trusting. Trusting. That was the word he used. I added it to the folder. By the time I finished, the numbers were undeniable. Over $30,000 of our joint money. Hotels, flights, dinners, weekend trips disguised as work. Money we'd planned to use for a house. Money I'd earned, saved, protected. All spent on someone else. So when that text came, I'm done. My parents think I deserve better. I wasn't blindsided. I was released. I sat there for nearly an hour after sending my reply. Then I did exactly what I'd been preparing to do for months. I started organizing. Every photo, every receipt, every message. Chronological, indexed, highlighted. I didn't want emotion. I wanted proof, because I knew what was coming next. He was going to leave. And he was going to make sure everyone believed it was my fault. I didn't rush. That's what people don't understand when they hear this story later. They assume I snapped, that I lashed out in a moment of rage. But rage is messy. This wasn't rage. This was precision. By the time the sun started leaning west and the quiet house began to feel too large around me, I had already built the outline in my head, exactly how I wanted this to land, exactly how I wanted it to look. If he was going to leave, fine. But he wasn't going to leave and turn me into the villain while he walked away clean. Not after a year of lies. Not after draining our future dollar by dollar. Not after letting his parents believe the story that made them feel superior. I opened a blank PDF template and started compiling. Photos from the investigator. Time-stamped, labeled. Bank records. Hotel charges highlighted in neon yellow. Receipts. Scanned and categorized. Text messages. Screenshots. With dates and cloud metadata. I created a table of contents like it was a legal exhibit, because in a way it was. By the end, the document was 127 pages long. 127 pages of truth he had been betting I would never have the stomach to say out loud. I stared at the final file name for a moment. Evidence Final PDF. Then I thought about changing it to something softer, something less final. But I didn't, because I was done cushioning the blow for people who never cushioned anything for me. I opened my email. 3 addresses. His parents, his older sister, Marissa, the husband of his boss, a man named Gavin Cole. I'd never met Gavin. I'd only seen his face in company photos online, standing beside her at charity events, smiling like a man who thought his life was stable. I hovered over the subject line and considered my options. Something dramatic? Something clever? No. If you want people to pay attention, you don't decorate the truth. You deliver it clean. Subject: the truth about your son, brother-in-law, wife. Body of the email. Attached is documented evidence of a year-long affair. All transactions were made using funds from our joint marital account. I thought you should know who you're defending. That was it. No rant, no pleading, no emotional mess they could dismiss as a bitter woman's revenge. Just evidence. I checked the clock. 2:47 p.m. And then I hit send. For a second, nothing happened. The world didn't shake. The house didn't collapse. The email simply left my outbox and entered theirs like a knife sliding quietly into place. I leaned back in my chair and let myself breathe, because in that moment, the story was no longer his to rewrite. At 3:23 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but my hand moved anyway, like I already knew what this was. Hello? The voice on the other end was a man's, older, tight with controlled rage. Eleanor Hayes? Yes. This is Thomas, my son's father. No greeting, no courtesy, just fury barely held together by pride. Is this really true? He demanded. I could hear something behind his anger, not concern for me. Humiliation. Because what he really meant was, is this real enough to damage us? Every word, I said calmly. Every receipt, every photo, every timestamp. It's all dated and documented. Silence. Then, like he couldn't stop himself, he snapped. He said you were controlling. He said you monitored him, that you isolated him, that you... I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. Did he mention the $30,000, I asked? Or the hotel rooms on our anniversary? Or the married woman he's been sleeping with for a year? His breath hitched. No answer. That told me everything. They believed his version completely, because it fit the narrative they already wanted. The successful son, the difficult wife, the family saving him. Thomas's voice lowered, cold and commanding. We need to talk in person. This is a family matter. I smiled even though no one could see it. No, I said, it's not. What? You made it clear for years what you think of me. Your son made his choice. I'm just making sure you can't pretend you didn't know the truth. His voice sharpened. You vindictive little... I ended the call. My hand didn't shake, but my heart pounded hard enough that I felt it in my throat. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, not because I needed anything, but because my body needed motion. I barely reached the counter before my phone rang again. This time his name. Call from Daniel, my husband. I stared at it for a full second. Then I answered. What did you do? He screamed the moment the line connected. His voice wasn't just angry. It was terrified. My parents are losing it, he went on, words crashing over each other. Gavin is calling her nonstop. My boss's husband. He's calling me. He's calling my mom. Eleanor, what the hell is wrong with you? I let him run out of breath. Then I said quietly, I sent them the truth. You ruined everything, he shouted. I leaned against the counter. You ruined it, I corrected. I just made sure you couldn't lie your way out of it. You had no right. I felt something cold rise in me at that. No right? I repeated softly. You used my money to fund your affair. You let your parents believe I was the problem. You were going to walk away and tell everyone you were escaping me. His voice cracked, suddenly pleading. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I said. And it's documented. Every lie, every hotel, every dollar. He went quiet for half a second. Then his tone shifted, sharp, defensive, desperate. You don't understand. She has power over me. I almost laughed again, because the messages in that PDF said otherwise. Congratulations, I said. You want it out. You're out. But everyone gets to know why. He started to speak again, but I ended the call. And then I did something I'd never done in 8 years. I blocked my husband's number. He called anyway, from different numbers, unknown numbers, over and over, 17 times in the next hour. Each time my phone lit up, the screen flashing like a heartbeat. I didn't answer. I opened my laptop and started a new folder. Harassment log, because I could already see the next wave coming. And I wasn't going to be unprepared for that either. The chaos didn't come all at once. It arrived in waves. Loud ones. Embarrassing ones. The kind that exposed exactly what people were really afraid of when the truth showed up uninvited. The morning after I sent the email, I woke up to pounding on my front door. Hard, relentless. I checked the security camera on my phone before I even left the bedroom. His mother. Standing on my porch at 7:02 a.m., hair unbrushed, coat thrown over pajamas, face twisted with fury. She wasn't knocking anymore. She was shouting. "You vindictive little monster," she screamed, her voice echoing down the quiet street. "You've destroyed our family. Open this door." I didn't. I stood in the hallway, barefoot on cold hardwood, listening to her rage bounce off the walls of a house she'd always treated like a temporary shelter I didn't deserve. She accused me of defamation, threatened lawsuits, called me every name she'd ever wanted to say out loud. After 15 minutes, I called the police. Not to escalate, to document. They arrived quickly. 2 officers, calm, professional. They spoke to her outside, asked her to leave, filed a report. She left still screaming that this wasn't over. The officer handed me a card before they left. "Call if she comes back," he said gently. I thanked him. Then I locked the door and sat on the kitchen floor until my breathing slowed. That afternoon, Marissa, my husband's older sister, called. Unlike her parents, she didn't yell. She sounded hollow. "I'm not calling to attack you," she said quietly. "I just need to know. Is it all true?" "Yes." No hesitation, no qualifiers. A long pause followed. "She told us you were controlling," Marissa admitted, "that you monitored his spending, that you checked his phone, that you isolated him." I closed my eyes. "That's not what happened," I said. "But I'm sure that's what she needed you to believe." Marissa sighed. "Mom and Dad were ready to help him escape. They thought they were saving him." Saving him. From a wife who paid half the bills. From accountability. From consequences. "They're humiliated," she continued. "Dad's business partners have seen the email. Someone forwarded it. The country club is talking." There it was. Not concern for me. Reputation. "They want to hire a lawyer," Marissa said. "They think they can argue you invaded his privacy." I smiled grimly. "Joint account," I replied. "Joint access. Marital communications. And the investigator operated legally. No trespassing. No wiretapping." Silence again. "Jesus," she murmured. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this." "Thank you," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. 3 days later, Gavin Cole reached out. The man whose life I had blown apart with one email. He asked to meet. Neutral ground. We chose a quiet coffee shop far from both our neighborhoods, somewhere anonymous enough to let grief breathe. He looked younger than I expected, and older. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from months of being told you're imagining things. "Thank you for sending that," he said softly once we sat down. "I suspected something for months. She kept denying it, said I was paranoid." I nodded. "She told him the same things," I said. Gavin's hands shook slightly as he wrapped them around his cup. "We have 3 kids," he whispered. I was going to keep trying, pretend everything was fine. Now I know I can't. We compared timelines, late nights, trips that didn't add up, money that vanished. She'd even bought lingerie once, charged to the wrong card. She told him it was a mistake. Gavin laughed bitterly. I believed her. I reached across the table without thinking and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry," I said. "No," he replied firmly. "Don't be. I needed the truth." The fallout at their company was swift. HR moved fast, too fast to ignore. An affair between a manager and a subordinate. Company credit cards used for hotels. Company vehicles for weekend trips. It was a corporate nightmare. He was fired on a Thursday afternoon, escorted out with a cardboard box. 3 hours later, my husband followed. He tried to claim he'd been manipulated, that his boss had power over him. He cried in the HR meeting, but the messages told a different story. Messages where he initiated contact, sent explicit photos, mocked both spouses. HR didn't fire him outright. They eliminated his position, a legal buffer, a quiet exit. The divorce process was brief. His parents' lawyer tried everything. Privacy invasion, harassment, character assassination. My lawyer shut it down calmly, then asked if they really wanted to go to trial. Because trial meant public record. Every hotel, every receipt, every message. They backed off fast. The judge wasn't sympathetic. He'd drained marital assets for an affair. He walked away with his personal belongings and a car he couldn't afford on his own. I kept the house, my retirement, my peace. He moved back in with his parents, started posting vague things online about toxic relationships and emotional abuse. I didn't respond. I documented. Screenshots, dates, times. Because silence, when backed by truth, is devastating. His parents stopped contacting me once the legal bills started stacking up. Turns out fighting evidence is expensive and pointless. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just sat in my quiet house one evening, the chaos finally receding, and realized something unexpected. The weight I'd been carrying for years was gone, and for the first time in a long time, I could breathe. The silence after everything collapsed was strange. Not empty, open. No constant tension humming under the surface, no carefully chosen words, no measuring myself against someone else's expectations. Just space. At first, I didn't know what to do with it. I cleaned the house obsessively, rearranged furniture, donated clothes I'd stopped wearing years ago because someone once said they didn't suit me. I sold a few investments I'd been sitting on, money I'd been too afraid to touch because the future was always we instead of me. Then I booked a plane ticket. Just one. No itinerary packed with obligation, no explaining where I was going or when I'd be back. I traveled alone for the first time in my adult life, and I felt lighter. A few weeks into the divorce proceedings, Gavin and I checked in on each other occasionally. Nothing dramatic, just quiet messages. How are you holding up? Did you sleep? The kids are struggling this week. We didn't trauma bond. We respected the damage too much for that. But there was comfort in talking to someone who didn't need explanations, someone who understood how betrayal rewires your nervous system. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks. Not romantic at first. Careful, measured. Two people rebuilding from wreckage, comparing scars without pressing on them. He told me about therapy, about learning how deeply he'd been gaslit, about the guilt of seeing his kids angry at their mother. They're allowed to be, he said one night. I just hate that I couldn't protect them from it. I understood. My ex, on the other hand, was unraveling. His sister reached out occasionally, never with gossip, just concern. He couldn't keep a job, argued with managers, started drinking too much. Once he emailed me, a long, rambling apology, said therapy helped him see what he'd thrown away, said his parents pressured him to find someone better, said he missed us. I didn't respond. 2 weeks later, another email, angry this time, accusing me of ruining his life, of being vindictive, of refusing to forgive when forgiveness was mature. I blocked that address too, because forgiveness without accountability isn't maturity, it's erasure. Gavin and I didn't plan anything. We let it happen the way healthy things do, slowly. The first time he reached for my hand, he hesitated. Tell me if this is too much, he said. It wasn't. It felt easy. We started seeing each other quietly. No announcements, no declarations. Just two adults choosing honesty over performance. When he told me he'd filed for divorce, I felt relief, not excitement, because I didn't want his freedom to hinge on me. I wanted it to be his. 6 months after the divorce finalized, his sister called again. She's trying to contact your family, she said, voice tight. Found your mother online, messaging her. My stomach dropped. She hasn't responded, she added quickly. I just thought you should know. A week later, my security camera caught him on my porch, crying, begging, staying for nearly an hour. I wasn't home. I filed another harassment report. The police warned him. His parents called me the next day, for the first time in months. You need to talk to him, his father said flatly. He needs closure. I laughed softly. He had closure, I said. It's called a divorce. You're being cruel. No, I replied. I'm being safe. Life settled. Not perfectly, but honestly, Gavin's kids warmed to me slowly. Board games, movie nights, trust built inch by inch. One evening, sitting on my back porch, I realized I hadn't thought about my ex all day. Not once. And that felt like victory. Almost a year to the day after that text message, I was sitting in my backyard with a glass of wine, watching the late afternoon sun dip behind the fence. Gavin was inside, helping his youngest with homework. I could hear their voices through the open window. Soft, patient, ordinary. Peaceful. My phone rang. His sister's name appeared on the screen. I hesitated before answering. Some connections take longer to loosen. I thought you should hear this from me, she said gently. He's getting married. I blinked. What? He met someone online a few months ago. They're getting married next month. Quick engagement. Mom and Dad are panicking. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even curiosity. That's good for him, I said honestly. I figured you'd want to know, she replied, in case he tries to reach out again. Thank you for telling me. After I hung up, Gavin stepped outside. Everything okay? I told him. He studied my face, searching for something. Hurt, jealousy, regret. Does it bother you? He asked. I shook my head. Not even a little. And I meant it. A few weeks later, his sister sent me a photo, a wedding announcement. My ex stood beside a woman significantly older than him, dressed in something expensive, somewhere that screamed money. He looked polished, smiling. She looked hollow. I showed it to Gavin. He tilted his head. You dodged a bullet. I really did. It's been almost 2 years now. I'm engaged. To a man who understands what it means to have your life implode, and to rebuild it carefully, honestly, without pretending the damage never happened. We're planning a small wedding, close friends, family that earned the title. His kids are excited. They asked if they could call me by a nickname instead of my first name. I said yes. I still live in the same house, but it's unrecognizable now. New furniture, new paint, new memories. The ghosts are gone. From what I hear through his sister, my ex's new marriage is already cracking. Turns out the man who accused me of being controlling married someone who actually is. Irony is cruel like that. His parents never apologized to me. I didn't expect them to. People like that don't apologize. They just revise history quietly and hope no one remembers. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if I went too far by sending that document, if I should have just filed quietly and moved on. I don't regret it. Not for a second. He wanted to leave. He wanted everyone to think I was the problem. He wanted to walk away clean. I just made sure the truth arrived first. Some people call that vindictive. I call it self-respect. Because I'd rather be called cold than be rewritten. I'd rather be labeled difficult than erased. I'd rather face the truth than live inside a comfortable lie. He made his choices.